This NCFE Learner Toolkit recording is on top tips for maths functional skills assessments at level 1 and level 2. The first top tip, read every question twice, and on the second reading you might want to highlight important information and keywords. You can refer also to the other recording in the Learner Toolkit series on decoding maths questions. It is really important that you make sense of the question before you begin to attempt it, particularly those higher marked problem solving questions. Secondly, different approaches are valid. We may approach problems from different perspectives, so there may be more than one approach that's valid. You don't need to show more than one approach in your working, just use the approach that makes sense to you, and so long as it's valid, you will gain marks. If you take the time to look at some of our mark schemes, you will notice that there are sometimes, for particularly the higher marked problem-solving questions, 1, 2, 3, 4, sometimes as many as 6 different possible ways of approaching the same question, but you might go about it in a different way, different order of doing things, but it assesses the same content and uses the same skills. Similarly, there are sometimes different methods that are equally valid and will result in the same correct answer. For example, there's loads of different ways to finding a percentage, like dividing by 100, then multiplying by the percentage value, or breaking a percentage down into increments of like 10% or 1% and adding those together, or converting into a decimal. So lots of different methods, all equally valid. There are marks for method. This is the most important thing. Please make sure that you show the method you've used so the examiner can award marks for what has been done correctly. Some questions will specifically state that you must show your working or show how you decide, but even if they don't, we can all make mistakes, either in non-calculator methods or when you have got your calculator. You make a calculator slip, you forget to put in a decimal point, for example. So always show the calculations that you're doing as well as the final answer that you reach, because quite often, even by showing, for example, you can see on the slide here, 2 plus 2, it's possible that that little sheep there could have got a method mark for writing 2 plus 2, even if they have reached the incorrect answer of 5, if it is a longer problem solving question. Obviously not if it's underpinning skills, but if it is a longer problem solving question, then absolutely. You should attempt every question. Even if you look at a question and you think, crumbs, there's no chance I can do that. It's far better to get some marks for doing part of a question instead of leaving the whole question and getting 0 just because you're not confident that you can reach the final answer. So just even a tiny little bit of a question that you can do, like doing a conversion, you can at least get a mark or so for what you have done. Number 6, you do need to give correct notation. For example, money should always be shown to either whole amounts, so 50 whole pounds, or to 2 decimal places if it involves pounds and pence. So a calculator display showing 2.5 would be written as £2.50. Also, coordinates should be given with a comma between the values, and commas should not be used in place of a decimal point for separating whole numbers and decimal values. So please be aware of that, because it's different in different countries. So in the UK, we would use a comma to separate the thousands in a whole number, whereas in other countries they use a comma as a decimal point. So please know that we do need the UK notation. Also, if a question involves time, then you should use a colon for 24-hour time. and AM or PM if you're using 12-hour time. Marks for rounding. So if you are going to round an amount, it's a good idea to write out the unrounded value as evidence of rounding. This is particularly important if you've made a mistake and the final value is not correct, because there may well be a mark available for accurate rounding. So you could get the mark for accurately rounding your incorrect answer, for example, if you've written the unrounded incorrect answer as well as your rounded version, and obviously you would get marks for your correct answer too. A task may require you to work for a specified number of decimal places, so it might say to 1 or 2 decimal places. If not, then sensible rounding could still be awarded marks provided the unrounded value is also seen. The subject content statements on this slide show that you've got one subject content statement at level 1 that relates to rounding, approximate by rounding to a whole number or to 1 or 2 decimal places. And then at level 2, you have 2 subject content statements. Carry out calculations with numbers up to 1 million, including strategies to check answers including estimation, approximation, and order, approximate, and compare decimals. And the key words are these: approximate and estimation. When you see these in a question, then it's likely that there are going to be marks for rounding. For charts and graphs, there are some key things to note to ensure that you do maximize your marks. You need to make sure that your scales are linear and start at 0. So they must go up in equal increments. So it doesn't have to go up in 2s like this example here. It might go up in 25s, it might go up in hundreds or thousands, but whatever the increments on the y-axis, so that's the vertical axis, they do need to go up in even or equal increments. Also remember to label your axes. Remember to add a title and add any key or legend if not already given. These are key areas where marks are often not awarded. You should check the reasonableness of your calculated answers. If you've got time, then do a full check. But if not, just think, does my answer make sense? Does it sound about right? You might want to use estimation for that. Or there are some things, for example, if your answer comes out as a decimal value, like 0.21, you can't have 0.21 of a person. You can't have 0.5 of a cat. So these values may need rounding up or down. So think about, does my answer make sense? If you're going to sit your final assessment online, please practice an online assessment for familiarity and confidence with the format. You should be familiar with the accepted ICT symbols for all of the operations, so plus, minus, and times are quite easy to find on your computer keyboard. But when it comes to division, a forward slash works absolutely fine, and that clearly shows, a forward slash clearly shows division, and it's the fastest thing for you to do if you're in an on-screen assessment. If you want to write pi, just write pi. Centimeters or meters squared, you could just put cm2. We'll understand that as meters squared, or cm_sq, squared. That's completely acceptable. And also think about what the examiner is going to see. The examiner is only going to see what you type into the online assessment. They will not receive any paper that you use for working. And yes, you can use paper for working. It does need to be destroyed. You can't take it away with you. But anything that you write on paper will not be seen by the examiner. So if, for example, you were doing this multiplication, 463 times 39, in a non-calculator paper, then, or even if you were doing it in a calculator section, because there's always room for your fingers slipping and you typing in the wrong thing to your calculator, write the multiplication in your working box and then you might complete that calculation on paper and then give your answer. And if you do this, then obviously if you've got the correct answer, then you'll get the method mark and the correct answer mark. But if, for example, we're doing the same calculation, but somewhere along the line we make a mistake so that we end up with this as our answer, 32,057, and in the answer box all we write is that as the answer, well, that answer is incorrect and our examiner cannot see the multiplication calculation that we did in the background. So we have got the answer to the multiplication incorrect, and your examiner doesn't know that you have done the calculation that you needed to do, perhaps for a problem solving question that we need to see that method for. So please do think about what you're writing in the answer box to make sure that you're making efficient use of time, but also maximizing your marks just in case you make a mistake. You can practice with our on-screen maths demo by following the link on the screen, and I'll also place it in the description for the video for ease. So please do have a practice with that Maths Tools demo, but beware that if you are going to sit the sample paper, which you will be able to find online as a sample paper, ask your teacher if that is the paper that they are going to set for a timed mock, because the last thing you want to do, and I've said this before, the last thing you want to do is to have sight of what your teacher is going to use as a mock before they sit that mock, because that's going to help you with those questions. And if you do fantastically in your mock because you've previously seen those questions, that's not going to help you out when it comes to the live assessment and you've never seen those questions. So it could lead to your teacher entering you for the exam when you're not actually ready. So do be aware of that. I wish you the best of luck with your final assessments.